It is my pleasure to introduce your chair today, Martin O'Kane, Manager Clinical Trials Unit, MHRA. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this morning's webinar, which is one of a series of EU exit and post-transition guidance webinars provided by MHRA. It was fantastic to see the level of interest in this webinar today, and this morning we will cover clinical trials of investigational medicinal products. Before I begin, I'd just like to point out that in some cases in the presentation, we've illustrated the transition guidance using charts or figures or used graphics to enhance the explanation of the guidance. These will not be included as official enhancements in the guidance published. So just a brief overview of how we'll run things this morning. Again, thank you for joining. This webinar will last around 90 minutes. We'll begin with a short presentation, providing you plenty of time for questions and answers. Our presenters will update you on the guidance that has been published. It is the approved guidance that is current as of today. The webinar is being recorded and a link will be sent out to delegates. The recording will not include the Q&A, as both the guidance and the related questions and answers are subject to change. Thank you very much to those of you who pre-submitted questions as part of your registration. We've tried to include as many of those up front in the presentation so that they'll be answered. We have grouped these and we'll answer them during the presentation, and we'll work through questions that have been submitted to us today, again, trying to group as much as possible. We're aware that there's a very large number of people registered on this webinar, so apologies if we don't meet or if we can't answer your question during the webinar. If you have a question that has not been answered, we recommend that you get in touch with our customer service centre or contact the trade association, which is also working to answer questions. So again, as a general approach, this provides an overview of our approach from 1st of January 2021. When the UK left the EU on the 31st of January 2020, the withdrawal agreement created a transition period until the end of 2020 that provided certainty to business, whilst the UK and EU negotiated its future trading relationship. So from the 1st of January 2021, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, or MHRA, will be the UK's standalone medicines and medical devices regulator. As such, the MHRA has published detailed guidance on how medicines and medical devices will be regulated at the end of the transition period, in both a negotiated and non-negotiated outcome with the EU. Great Britain, which consists of England, Wales and Scotland, will operate an initial legal framework that incorporates EU legislation into UK law. However, the UK regulator will be able to take sovereign regulatory decisions to help evolve the UK legal regime to meet future UK needs, and to take regulatory decisions that will also apply directly in Northern Ireland, as long as those decisions do not conflict with the EU decisions while the Northern Ireland Protocol applies. Underpinning all these actions is the UK's government's commitment to ensure that there will be no impediment across the UK to securing access of vital medicines, including vaccines, following the end of the transition period. And just to add, from a specific clinical trials perspective, the Northern Ireland Protocol refers to Article 13 of the EU Clinical Trials Directive relating to manufacture and import of an investigational medicinal product. Authorization of a clinical trial application to MHRA will consist of a single submission, and MHRA will regulate and authorise for both Northern Ireland and Great Britain. So before we move into the content of the presentation, I'd like to introduce you to the team that we have available for you this morning. As Alex mentioned, my name is Martin O'Kane. I manage the Clinical Trials Unit within the Licensing Division at MHRA. We also have Louisa Obilo, who is our Senior Clinical Safety Scientist within the Clinical Trials Unit, Graham McNaughton, who is a leading Senior Pharmaceutical Assessor within Clinical Trials Unit. We also have colleagues from our Inspectorate, Alan Moon, who is a Senior Good Manufacturing Practice Inspector, Gail Francis an expert good clinical practice inspector. I'm also delighted to say that we have colleagues joining us from the Health Research Authority, Clive Collett and Sue Bourne, who will be available to answer questions. So today we'll run through the guidance, of course, that will cover areas such as the sponsor and legal representative, submitting an application to MHRA, registration and reporting of results, submitting safety reports, and then manufacture and supply of the IMP. So the MHRA guidance was published on the 1st of September 2020. There were 31 or 32 items of guidance relating to regulation of medicines and medical devices in Great Britain from the 1st of January 2021. 6 of these relate either directly or indirectly to clinical trials of investigational medicinal products. These are registering to make submissions to the MHRA from 1st of January, a webinar associated with those submissions, guidance on substantial amendments to a clinical trial from 1st of January, and in terms of transparency, registration of clinical trials of IMPs and publication of summary results. There is also guidance on importing investigational medicinal products into Great Britain from approved countries and a list of those approved countries for the definition of marketing authorization. So to start at the beginning of the process, who can run a clinical trial in the UK? So in terms of the location of the sponsor or legal representative, we received a large number of questions about this prior to the webinar. So hopefully this will provide some clarity and confidence for sponsors running international trials involving the UK. So to confirm, the sponsor or a legal representative of a UK clinical trial must be in the UK or a country on an approved country list. And this list would initially include all EU and EEA countries. Proposal is that this approved country list would be approved every 3 years, and legislation would be developed to determine considerations for adding or removing countries from that list. Just to note that this flexibility isn't reciprocated, so that if a UK sponsor is running a trial in the EU, that UK sponsor must ensure that a sponsor or legal representative is established in the EU. However, an amendment to MHRA will not be needed if a UK sponsor is adding an EU legal representative to cover EU EEA sites, as this will not affect the UK authorization. If we move on then to submitting a clinical trial authorization application to MHRA, until the end of this year, users will be able to submit applications for CTAs, which would include initial applications, substantial amendments, end of trial notifications, and developmental safety update reports or annual safety reports or DSURs via CESP, as you can today. However, from January 2021, users will need to submit their applications via the new MHRA submissions. All users requiring access to this system will need to register for access via MHRA submissions. And also to clarify a number of questions that we received, we will still be asking applicants to use a UDRAC number as the trial reference number, at least in the short term. So I hope this chart illustrates that the submission process should not be challenging or significantly different from what happens today. Note again, there won't be separate submissions needed for Great Britain and Northern Ireland. MHRA will authorise for all of the UK. The left-hand system shows the current process. So currently, you would obtain your UDRAC number, complete your application form in either UDRA-CT system or the IRAS system, then download the application form in XML and submit via CESP. When it's received by MHRA, MHRA will validate the application and conduct the assessment and communicate directly with the applicant. The process from the 1st of January 2021 is very similar. So again, we're asking for a UDRAC number as a reference number. However, complete the application form only in IRAS. I will highlight again that this is entirely possible today, that either UDRAC or IRAS can be used to complete the application form. From January, only IRAS should be used to complete the application form. As today, you will then download the application form in XML file. However, now you'll submit via MHRA submissions rather than CESP. When it's received by MHRA, the process is exactly the same as today. For those who are aware of the Combined Ways of Working project or pilot, I'll mention that in a minute. So, as I've mentioned, all sponsors wishing to make clinical trial submissions will have to register with the MHRA submissions to gain access. So our first poll this morning is, have you registered for MHRA submissions? And the poll will be open for 1 minute to give you time to answer the question. So I'll pause here whilst you can vote. Thank you, Alex. So we have the results in from about 75% of those on the call. And we can see that 28% have registered for the MHRA submissions, whereas 72% have not. It's very clear, therefore, that if you have a role in submitting applications to MHRA, you should, as soon as possible, consult the guidance published on registering for MHRA submissions and go ahead and register as soon as you can, and definitely prior to the end of December this year. Just a word on the Combined Ways of Working pilot project. This is not part of the transition guidance, but we've received some questions on this, so I'll take the opportunity to clarify. The MHRA and MHRA and HRA have been testing a more integrated process for researchers and sponsors involving single submission, coordinated review, combined communications to request any further information, and a single communication to confirm the final decision on a clinical trial. A cohort of pilot participants from industry, CROs, and NHS organisations have been taking part in this pilot, and we've received about 200 applications to date. Over the course of the next year, we'll further develop and scale up this process to make available to all. So for those of you who are aware or are a part of this pilot, you'll continue with the same processes now, that is using IRAS for preparation and submission of your joint application to MHRA and HRA. If you're not aware of the pilot or aren't part of the pilot, simply watch this space and we'll develop and scale up over the next year and provide further information. So now that we've looked at who can run a trial, how to submit, we'll now look at registration of your trial on a public database and results reporting. So as is the current situation, any favourable opinion by a UK Research Ethics Committee is subject to the clinical trial being registered on a publicly accessible database. The HRA recently published its Make It Public Research Transparency strategy, and in the long term has made a commitment to register clinical trials on behalf of sponsors and researchers. Until that system is in place from 1st of January 2021, sponsors should register UK clinical trials on an established international register, such as the ISR CTN registry or clintrials.gov, to ensure the public is aware of your trial. Again, as is the current expectation, registration should occur before the first participant is recruited and no later than 6 weeks after recruitment of the first participant. Again, as is the current situation, HRA run a deferrals process as per current guidelines. So for example, adult phase 1 studies may have an exemption or a deferral. If you wish to do that, please contact HRA at the address shown. Moving on to results. Sponsors of ongoing trials conducted in the UK will be able to submit results to EudraCT after the end of the transition period. So those are trials that are in flight and already registered in EudraCT and the EU Clinical Trials Register. You will be able to upload your summary results in that system. However, note that as MHRA will not have access to EudraCT, we cannot update the trial status for you from ongoing to completed. For new trials, you should publish in the public register where your study is registered, again as today. And as per current expectations, you should inform MHRA when this has been done and provide HRA with a final study report. For those trials that are exempt from publication, for example, adult phase 1 studies, please do provide that summary results to MHRA. I'll now pass over to my colleague Louisa, who will take you through the safety reporting requirements.
Hello, so I will be talking you through the safety aspects of clinical trials, in particular the reference safety information and the submission of safety reports. So with this slide, this clarifies the implementation date and the type of RSI used based on the IMP's marketing authorization status. So currently, where an IMP that has a marketing authorization and is used within its license indication, summary of product characteristics can be used as the RSI instead of the IB. From January 2021, this will apply to IMPs with a marketing authorization in a listed country, which will initially be EU and EEA countries. Just to note that this list is subject to change. In trials where there are both European and UK trial sites, the RSI implementation date is the date when the RSI has been approved in all member states and the UK. To facilitate multinational trials, it is advisable that substantial amendments, including changes to the RSI, are submitted to both Europe and the UK at the same time in order to harmonise the implementation date. With the last point, the RSI can be used for expectedness until it has been given approval by the MHRA. I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So currently there are 3 possible routes for submitting SUSARs to the MHRA, and these are the EudraVigilance Gateway, EBWeb, and our own eSUSAR website reporting tool. From January 2021, we will be losing access to our European IT platforms, and as a result, you will no longer be able to submit SUSARs to the MHRA using either EBWeb or the EudraVigilance Gateway. These will instead be replaced by our own contingency reporting routes, and these are the ICSR submissions portal and the MHRA Gateway. These have been designed to mimic the exact same reporting processes for EBWeb and the EudraVigilance Gateway, so we will have a web reporting tool which allows you to submit the report using the online form, and there will also be the functionality for you to upload your R2 and R3 files, XML files that you submitted through the EudraVigilance system. And just with the EudraVigilance Gateway, the MHRA Gateway will enable a database-to-database transmission of SUSARs into the MHRA. With regards to our eSUSAR website, this will remain available from January, with the exception that we will no longer be forwarding SUSARs to the EMA's EudraVigilance Clinical Trial Module, or EVCTM. As a result, you will need to ensure that you have alternative means to ensure that the EVCTM is populated with your eSUSARs. Just going back to the MHRA Gateway, for all existing EudraVigilance Gateway users intending on using the MHRA Gateway to submit SUSARs, please note that you must be registered first with the MHRA submissions portal, as this is where the first steps of registering to the Gateway are performed. Touching upon the last point on DHOR reports, currently they are submitted via the CESP portal. However, from January, this will change and you will need to submit DHORs via the MHRA submissions portal, where you go to the Human Medicines tile and select DHORs from the regulatory activity and then original submission as the subtype. Okay, just moving on to the next slide. Okay, so going back to SUSAR reporting, our guidance on reporting SUSARs via the 2 new routes was updated last month, and they can be found on the 2 links that I've included on this slide. These links provide a wealth of information such as webinars, short video demos, and supporting documents which will give an in-depth step-by-step guide on the registration and submission of SUSARs via ICHR submissions portal and the MHRA gateway. Just a short note on the first link, there is a statement that says that when you're submitting ICSRs or SUSARs via the 2 new routes that you should be receiving non-serious and serious UK reports. Just to clarify that this is applicable only to post-marketing reporting of ADRs. So when you start to submit SUSARs through these 2 new routes, you should only be expecting acknowledgements of receipt. And finally, on to the last point. Registration has been open since March of last year. We are still receiving requests for registration, so I would recommend that if you haven't done so already to register as soon as possible. Additionally, if you do have a SUSAR where the deadline date falls on the 31st of December, you have up until 11 PM on that day to submit reports. I'm aware that it could take up to 48 hours for acknowledgements to be received. However, we will be publishing a reconciliation list of all the SUSARs that we received on that day up until 11 PM. So you can always look at that reconciliation list to confirm receipt of the SUSARs. I will now hand you over to Martin, who will be able to take you on to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Louisa. So we have our next poll asking again about registration for new systems to provide information to MHRA. And this question, which we'll keep open for again about 1 minute, have you registered for MHRA Gateway and ICSR submissions? Okay, I see about 2/3 of our attendees have voted, so perhaps we'll close the vote there. And again, it's very striking. 86% of those who responded have not registered for MHRA Gateway or ICSR submissions. So once again, if your role includes submission of safety reports to MHRA, strongly encouraged to look at that guidance and register as soon as possible. So if we move back to the presentation. Thank you. And I think now we'll just have a quick, before we move on to the importation, manufacture and supply of IMPs, we'll just give a quick overview of where we've got to so far. And maybe, there we go. So to confirm, the MHRA Clinical Trials Unit will assess and authorise clinical trial authorisation applications for the UK. The sponsor or a legal representative of a clinical trial can be in the UK or a country on an approved country list, and this list would initially include EU, EEA countries. Preparation of a clinical trial authorisation application post-transition will be in IRIS. That's preparation of the application form, as is currently possible. Submission of the application package post-transition will be via the new MHRA submission system. And you should continue to use existing and established international registers so the public is aware of your trial and the trial results. I'll now pass over to Alan Moon, our inspectorate colleague, who will discuss manufacture and supply of IMPs.
Okay, thanks, Martin. So as part of the guidance that was published early September, the information relating to the manufacture and supply of IMPs was included in that. So firstly, in terms of authorization requirements for manufacture, packaging, and release of certification and release of IMPs within the UK, no changes are there for that. We still require a UK MIA IMP for all of those manufacturing activities, including the named personnel, the production manager, QC, QP, etc. In terms of the supply from other countries into UK and GB and Northern Ireland, the requirement for supplying in a number of cases directly to clinical trial sites rather than through licensed premises may continue. However, the oversight mechanism for this needs to be implemented. So this is described in the published guidance, and to summarise, there's no requirement for UK QPs to recertify product if it is received from a listed country, an approved country list, and as Martin said initially, that includes all of the EU and EEA member states. That oversight process does need to be managed and implemented by a UK MIA IMP holder. However, all sites don't need to necessarily apply for that license. It can be from an existing IMP license holder to provide that as a service. The QP for the oversight process actually may be resident within the UK or in the EEA, but if the QP is not resident in the UK, they are only able to perform those duties in terms of providing the oversight process, not actual certification within the UK. Arrangements for supply of medicines, including IMPs to Northern Ireland, at this point remain under discussion with the EU Commission. So we're not able to provide further details on that part at the moment, but we'll publish guidance as soon as possible. In terms of importing QP certified NIMPs or unmodified comparators from listed countries, that would be through the licensed medicinal product supply chain using a wholesale dealer license and the RPI process, which was discussed at yesterday's webinar for supply chain in general for all medicines. For existing wholesale dealer authorization holders, there's going to be a 6-month period for notifying MHRA and a 2-year period to notify the intent, and 2-year period to name that RPI. But for any new wholesale distribution authorization applicants after the 1st of January, that RPI will need to be named on that application at the time of the application. Just going back to the supply and the oversight mechanism, supply of IMPs, I should have mentioned there will be a 12-month period from the 1st of January to implement that. Okay. So in terms of, just for completeness, I've included the things that are not changing. So the import of IMPs to the UK from non-listed countries, so import from a third country as it stands today, that will remain as currently, and we'll need a UK MIA IMP holder and a QP declaration from that UK MIA IMP holder submitted as part of the CTA from the site that's responsible for that import and certification. For non-investigational products that are imported from non-listed countries, again, remains as currently and are considered as unlicensed medicines and need to be imported under an MS license, manufacturer's specials license, and the advance notification of 28 days is described in guidance note 14. Okay, so just to hand back to you, Martin, to summarise.
I would like to say thank you very much to everyone who signed up for this webinar. Thank you for your amazing engagement during the webinar in terms of questions and indeed feedback in the chat box. That's really appreciated. Special thanks to those panelists and particularly those from our colleagues at the HRA for attending this morning and answering the questions so comprehensively. You'll see the slide on the screen. Another reminder to register for submissions. And if you need further information, there's also guidance from our customer service centre and online. So we will sign off there and say thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.